If you looked at OpenAI's bank account today, you would probably think they were the richest independent startup in human history.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, you see these massive influxes of cash, right? Like 10 billion here, 20 billion there. You'd assume they are just sitting on a mountain of liquid wealth.
Right. It looks great on paper.
Exactly. But if you look closely at the actual contracts tying all that money together, well, the reality is entirely different. They haven't just raised capital. They have essentially chained themselves to over $1 trillion in future infrastructure debt.
Yeah, a trillion with a T.
So today we are looking at the American AI industry not just as this shiny technological marvel, but as a financial black hole. And it is sucking in all the available capital in the world. Welcome to the deep dive.
It truly is a financial gravity well. When you map out the actual money flowing through this industry, it stops looking like a traditional tech boom and starts looking like an incredibly complex, high-stakes geopolitical treaty. We're seeing valuations puff up into the hundreds of billions, and these traditional tech giants are just constantly throwing money at each other. They're buying pieces of their rivals and forming alliances that honestly defy traditional business logic.
Exactly. I mean, just recently, Google committed up to $40 billion to a company called Anthropic. But Anthropic makes the Claude model, which is the direct blood rival competitor to Google's very own AI, Gemini.
Right.
They were just fighting this brutal war for corporate clients, and suddenly Google is funding the enemy. It is messy. So our mission today is to untangle this massive web of capital.
And to keep our analysis sharp, we need some ground rules. We have to filter out the noise. So the companies we're analyzing today must meet 4 strict criteria.
Okay, lay them out for us.
First, they have to be at the absolute forefront of foundational AI development. Second, they must be highly active in the capital markets. Like, we are talking about aggressive financial maneuvering here.
Right.
Third, they're primarily US-based because that's really the epicenter of this specific capital web. And finally, they have to be massive. We're only looking at companies valued in the billions.
Right, so smaller niche startups or even massive companies like Apple that are sort of, sitting quietly on the sidelines of this specific infrastructure war they're out for today.
Exactly.
So if you're feeling overwhelmed by who owns what or why a competitor is funding their rival, you're in the right place.
Okay, let's unpack this. We know the basic food chain of the industry. At the bottom, you have the silicon, right? The chip layer.
Right. And Nvidia is the undisputed king there with about 80 to 90% market share.
Which is just wild.
Yeah, it is. Though Google is pumping out their own TPUs, they're expecting over 3 million of them by 2026. Amazon has their Trainium chips, and Broadcom is operating as this sort of quiet kingpin manufacturing custom silicon for Google and Meta. Wow, okay. And sitting directly on top of that silicon is the data center and cloud layer. Because, you can have all the chips in the world, but they are useless without the gigawatt scale infrastructure to power and cool them.
Precisely, and that layer is dominated by the big 3. So that's Amazon AWS, Microsoft Azure, and Google Cloud. Plus aggressive infrastructure players like Oracle and Elon Musk's xAI.
Oh, right, xAI. That's the one where Musk keeps joking about building the biggest data center in the solar system, which, knowing him, might not actually be a joke.
Yeah, it rarely is with him. So then, above the cloud, you have the large model layer. This is the foundational intelligence. And the dominant trio right now is OpenAI, Anthropic, and Google's Gemini.
Okay.
And then above that is the application layer, the end-user software. But for our purposes today, the real financial warfare is happening in those middle layers, particularly around the models.
Right, because when you look at that model layer, something wild stands out. You have this massive global ecosystem of capital, but it all funnels into just 2 independent, pure-play AI companies, OpenAI and Anthropic. Gemini is rich. It is fully backed by Google's deep pockets. It's like the wealthy trust fund kid of the group. Gemini doesn't need to pass the hat around and dilute its equity to survive.
That is the crucial distinction. Because Gemini is internally funded, the entirety of the external capital market is swarming around OpenAI and Anthropic.
Right.
They have the generational genius, they have the models, but they do not have the physical infrastructure.
Yeah.
They need billions to survive, and every investor on Earth is desperate for a piece of them.
But help me understand this desperation specifically with Anthropic, because OpenAI has massive brand recognition, right? They have ChatGPT, everyone's mom knows what it is. Anthropic has far fewer everyday users, yet in May, Anthropic's valuation hit $96.5 billion. Why is Wall Street drooling over a company with a smaller consumer footprint?
Well, because in this space, consumer footprint doesn't necessarily equal profitability. What investors are looking at is Anthropic's ARR, or annual recurring revenue. This is a metric that gauges highly predictable, reliable corporate income. Anthropic is incredibly efficient at monetizing enterprise clients. Their ARR grew 30 times over just 15 months.
Wait, 30 times?
Yeah, so put a hard number on that. Their recurring revenue jumped from $300 million in April to $470 million in May alone.
Wait, really? Their baseline revenue jumped $170 million in a single 30-day window.
Yes, because they aren't relying on $20 monthly consumer subscriptions. They are embedding their models deeply into corporate workflows, financial institutions, and massive enterprise systems.
Oh, wow.
It proves they're a cash printing machine, which is why the old money tech giants are just falling over themselves to buy in.
Okay, so let's talk about how that old money is placing its bets. Microsoft obviously wrote the playbook here. They moved early, throwing $13 billion into OpenAI to secure a roughly 27% stake.
A brilliant move.
Truly. With OpenAI now valued around $850 billion, Microsoft's stake is worth roughly $229 billion. That's a 17 times return. It's a masterstroke.
It really is.
But what I want to know about is the guys who missed the early boat. Like, look at Masayoshi Son at SoftBank. He is famous for taking massive aggressive swings, but his math on OpenAI looks terrible.
It's a painful contrast. I mean, SoftBank poured over $60 billion into OpenAI, but that $60 billion only secured them about a 13% stake.
Jeez.
So Sun spent nearly 5 times what Microsoft spent, but got half the ownership.
How does that actually happen? I know he was late to the party, but structurally, how do you spend $60 billion and get so little equity?
Well, it comes down to the mechanics of late-stage venture capital and valuation caps. When Microsoft invested, OpenAI's valuation was relatively low, and Microsoft absorbed a huge amount of early risk.
Right, they took the gamble.
Exactly. By the time SoftBank entered, OpenAI had already proven its product-market fit. The valuation cap had skyrocketed. So Sun wasn't buying cheap early equity. He was likely forced to buy secondary shares or enter at an astronomical premium just to get a seat at the table. He paid the ultimate late tax.
And the brutal irony is how he funded that late tax. To get the $60 billion in liquid cash, Sun had to liquidate $5.8 billion worth of his Nvidia stock.
Yeah.
He sold Nvidia, the company that literally provides the shovels for the AI gold rush, to buy overpriced late-stage shares in OpenAI. He even admitted at an investor conference that he literally cried over the decision.
It perfectly captures the sheer panic in the market.
Speaking of panic, I need you to explain Amazon's strategy to me, because on the surface, it makes absolutely zero sense.
Okay.
Amazon initially put $4 billion into Anthropic in 2023 and another $4 billion in 2024. Makes sense, they are backing OpenAI's main rival.
Right.
But then they shifted to a double bet. They committed up to $50 billion for OpenAI and $25 billion for Anthropic. You don't buy stock in Coke and Pepsi if you're trying to win a cola war. How does Amazon justify essentially funding their own partner's direct competitor?
What's fascinating here is that you have to stop looking at this like a traditional stock purchase. Amazon isn't handing Anthropic $25 billion in cash for them to just, put in a Chase savings account.
Oh, yeah.
This is a closed-loop economy. Amazon doesn't care who wins the cola war because Amazon owns the bottling plant.
So it's all about Amazon Web Services, AWS?
Exactly. The old money tech companies realize their internal development is too slow, so their strategy is to buy influence with the new money geniuses to avoid becoming obsolete. Amazon essentially abandoned the idea of building their own foundational model from scratch. Instead, they're funding both of the leading horses. But that funding is heavily tied to compute credits on Amazon's cloud.
Oh, it's like the 19th century coal mining towns. The mining company would pay their workers in company scrip, like fake money that could only be spent at the company store. So the wealth never actually leaves the company's ecosystem. Amazon is giving Anthropic billions, but Anthropic is contractually obligated to turn right around and spend it renting Amazon's data centers.
That is the perfect analogy. And Google realized they had to do the exact same thing. Initially, Google was just making small $100 million friendship investments in Anthropic, keeping them close. but focusing entirely on their own internal model, Gemini.
Right, because Google wants to own the whole stack.
But then Anthropic's Claude model blew up. It benchmarked incredibly well, developers loved it, and Google realized that betting their entire enterprise cloud future solely on Gemini was just an existential risk.
Yeah, too many eggs in one basket.
Exactly. If Gemini stumbled, Google Cloud would lose the AI generation. So by April 24th, Google hit the panic button. They committed up to $40 billion to Anthropic, plus 5 exaflops of massive computing power over 5 years.
Man, it's an incredibly expensive insurance policy. So, let's follow the money. Amazon gives $25 billion, Google gives $40 billion, Anthropic and OpenAI have to spend that money on compute. Where does the money go next? It funnels straight down to the hardware guys. Nvidia is sitting at the bottom of this entire ecosystem, catching almost all the cash.
Which brings us to how Nvidia is wielding that power. Nvidia isn't just selling chips, they are aggressively buying loyalty to ensure they never lose their monopoly. They signed a $30 billion strategic intent agreement with OpenAI, which essentially locks OpenAI into using Nvidia's GPUs for the foreseeable future.
But Jensen Huang, Nvidia's CEO, admitted they actually wanted a much bigger piece of OpenAI, right? He said they got in too late, which is why it was only a $30 billion deal and not a $100 billion deal.
Correct. The valuation had climbed too high, even for Nvidia's balance sheet, to justify a larger equity stake. But Nvidia didn't stop with OpenAI. They are blanketing the entire supply chain in cash. Yeah. They pledged $10 billion to Anthropic. They threw $5 billion at Intel, $2 billion at SpaceX, and sprinkled billions more across smaller startups. They are making about $40 billion in capital commitments this year alone, just to bind the industry to their hardware.
But here's the thing about monopolies, they make customers incredibly nervous. If I am OpenAI or Anthropic, I do not want Nvidia to have absolute life or death power over my company.
Of course not.
And we are seeing resistance. Anthropic is actively diversifying, running huge workloads on Google's TPUs and Amazon's Trainium chips. But OpenAI did something even wilder. They struck a massive deal with Nvidia's mortal enemy, AMD.
And this is one of the most revealing deals in the entire industry. OpenAI needed leverage against Nvidia. So they went to AMD, and AMD agreed to provide 6 exaflops of compute power. But to win that business, AMD had to agree to astonishing terms. They issued 160 million warrants to OpenAI at a strike price of 1 single cent per share.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, because I want to challenge this. Is this actually a smart strategy, or is it just absolute panic? I understand AMD is desperate for market share, but a warrant is the right to buy stock. At 1 cent a share, AMD is essentially giving up 10% of its entire corporate equity to the customer.
They are?
Wait, the supplier is giving up 10% of their company to the customer just to get the business. That shows how desperate everyone is to sit at the AI cool kids table. Why wouldn't AMD just offer OpenAI a massive 90% discount on the physical chips?
Because a discount only saves OpenAI money today. A warrant aligns their long-term incentives on a massive scale. Think about the mechanics here. If OpenAI takes those AMD chips, integrates them perfectly, and proves to the world that AMD is just as good as Nvidia for running frontier AI models, what happens?
Well, Wall Street realizes Nvidia has real competition, and AMD's stock price goes to the moon.
Exactly. And because OpenAI holds warrants at 1 cent, if AMD's stock skyrockets to $200 a share, OpenAI stands to make billions of dollars in pure profit just from holding the equity.
That is wild.
AMD didn't just win a customer, they engineered a scenario where OpenAI is financially incentivized to make AMD successful. Anthropic saw this and recently signed an almost identical deal with AMD.
That is brilliant financial engineering. The supplier turns the customer into a motivated partner. But, to actually run all this silicon, whether it's Nvidia or AMD, you need the physical grid, you need concrete, you need water for cooling, and you need raw gigawatt-scale electricity.
Which leads us to the data center layer, where the drama is just off the charts. Let's talk about the Stargate project.
Stargate. This was the ultimate ambition of this era. It was envisioned as a $100 billion unified mega data center in Texas.
$100 billion.
Yes. We are talking about power requirements on the scale of a commercial nuclear reactor. In 2025, upon taking office, Trump gathered all the heavy hitters at the White House to announce it. OpenAI, Oracle, and SoftBank. It was supposed to be the Avengers of AI infrastructure. SoftBank was going to put up $19 billion, OpenAI $19 billion, Oracle $7 billion, and the UAE's investment fund, MGX, another $7 billion.
But Elon Musk took one look at it and immediately tweeted that they didn't actually have the money or the alignment to pull it off. And, well, he was entirely right. By December, the entire partnership exploded during a negotiation summit in Tokyo.
What actually killed it? How do you have the backing of the US president, the biggest AI company in the world, and unlimited Middle Eastern capital, and still fail?
It was a fundamental clash of business models.
Yeah.
Every faction wanted something structurally incompatible. OpenAI, believing their models were the crown jewel, demanded the right to use the facility without fronting massive liquid cash.
So they wanted to pay in IP and future revenue.
Exactly. But Oracle, who was actually tasked with pouring the concrete and wiring the grid, they demanded operational control because they were taking on the physical execution risk. And SoftBank, acting as the bank, demanded strict, guaranteed return on investment timelines.
And because Trump didn't step in to appoint one definitive leader with veto power, it became a standoff.
Exactly. A project of that scale cannot survive by committee. It dissolved into standard, fragmented lease agreements. The grand vision of a single, unified megastructure just died in Tokyo. And throughout all of this, Oracle's stock price practically acted as a heart monitor for these rumors, wildly spiking and crashing.
It just shows how fragile these massive alliances are. And speaking of fragile, we have to touch on Elon Musk's hilarious flip-flop with Anthropic. On February 26, Musk sent out this blistering tweet calling Anthropic anti-human and evil, just totally nuking them in the public square.
And yet, exactly 70 days later, SpaceX, where Musk is CEO, announced a major partnership to provide Anthropic with 220,000 GPUs.
That pivot is legendary.
When the media asked him about calling them anti-human just 2 months prior, Musk casually backtracked. He claimed he met with the Anthropic team and his evil detector didn't go off.
His evil detector, it's incredible. The moment he realizes there is massive capital and strategic advantage on the table, the mortal enemy suddenly passes the vibe check.
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the Stargate failure and Musk's rapid pivot perfectly illustrate the sheer velocity of the AI era. $100 billion projects can vanish overnight, and mortal enemies become best friends when massive profits are on the line.
So what does this all mean? We've mapped out the chips, the data centers, the company script, the warrants, and the collapsing alliances. How do we synthesize this entire web into something we can actually track?
We can distill this wildly complex ecosystem into 3 golden rules. Rule number 1, Nvidia invests in everyone to lock in chip orders, right? Rule number 2, everyone invests in OpenAI and Anthropic to lock in cloud and compute orders. And rule number 3, competitors at the same level of the supply chain fight fiercely, but entities across different levels bind together for survival.
Which brings us back to the shocking reveal we started with. Because of all these conditional commitments and company script setups, OpenAI hasn't just raised $110 billion in cash.
No?
They have contractually committed to over $1 trillion in future computing orders with these tech giants. They have chained themselves to their investors.
That is the defining characteristic of this era. These aren't normal cash investments, they are conditional commitments. The capital creates an inescapable closed loop of money and resources.
You know, it perfectly mirrors the famous Battle of Red Cliffs from the historical epic, The Romance of the Three Kingdoms. To survive the rough, turbulent seas, an entire fleet of rival warlords decided to chain their heavy warships together.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Right. The logic was sound. It creates a massive, stable platform. It lowers the individual variance and risk for any single ship. If the AI market gets choppy, OpenAI and Anthropic are chained to the balance sheets of Microsoft, Amazon, and Google. They won't sink alone.
But that historical strategy had a fatal structural flaw, which perfectly highlights the systemic risk in AI today. If one ship catches fire, if there is a massive power grid failure, a sudden plateau in enterprise AI demand, or if just one major corporate partner defaults on their billions in infrastructure commitments, the fire spreads across those contractual chains. The entire fleet of the AI industry will burn together.
It is a terrifying level of interconnected risk. And it leaves us with one final lingering thought. If these AI companies have chained themselves to over $1 trillion in future infrastructure debt, how aggressive will their future monetization strategies have to become? When the bill finally comes due for this massive, chained AI fleet, will it be everyday consumers and small businesses who are forced to pay the toll? Something for you to chew on until next time.